At first, everyone thought it was just another stone, an icy fragment drifting from the abyss of space, cold, indifferent, meaningless. Another relic, thrown into our solar system like a toss of a cosmic coin. But the three-eyed atlas did not behave as we were used to. Its trajectory contradicted known laws, and its internal emissions pulsed with an abnormal rhythm. And now, as the James Webb Telescope directed its relentless gaze at this ancient wanderer, it returned images that rewrite the boundaries of what we consider natural. Because hidden beneath the surface of the object, deep within its rotating mass, was something scientists never expected to see. A pattern, not random or geological, but engineered. A repeating geometry with mathematical precision, reflecting shapes we associate only with intelligent design. Grids, angles, walls, corridors, cavities arranged at exact intervals. Webb not only discovered reflections but found a structure resembling a city map. And now the question we must ask is not only what the three-eyed atlas is. The question is who built it and why it is heading straight through our solar system. Let's consider what James Webb has discovered. At first, the three-eyed atlas was set aside as a curiosity. It was the third known interstellar object to enter our system, following a strange but traceable path. Minor deviations were recorded, but nothing alarming until James Webb was directed to study its surface in the infrared range. What the telescope discovered was not noise or coincidence, but a repeating geometric structure hidden beneath layers of cosmic dust. Using his tools, NIRCam and MIRI, Webb captured thermal signatures outlining contours that were too regular and intentional to be random. Long, narrow corridors, rectangular intersections, closed cavities arranged with perfect symmetry. Initially, the scientists attributed the data to sensor anomalies, but with new information, it became undeniable. The structure within the three-eyed atlas had proportions and spatial logic characteristic of urban planning. It was not erosion or crystallization. It was a plan, something that was designed and perhaps even inhabited. If these dimensions were translated into an earthly context, we would see that it resembles an urban block, not just once, but repeating, almost like modules, as if the one who built this structure used a grid-based architecture consistent throughout all interior spaces. The consequences were overwhelming because nothing in nature constructs in repeating perfect right angles. But intelligence does. Although only the shapes caused concern, it was the thermal behavior of these internal patterns that truly caused panic. The core of the three-eyed atlas emits infrared pulses, but only from specific areas, and those areas perfectly align with the structural grids. This means that heat is not emitted naturally. It is released in localized, synchronized bursts, like heat from infrastructure or even reactors. Webb sensors recorded fluctuations that on Earth could be called controlled temperature regulation. Imagine walking through an abandoned building where some rooms are still warm, intact, and active. This behavior, combined with unusual electromagnetic disturbances around the object, led engineers to propose a shocking hypothesis. Internal cavities may not just be hollow, but protected. Some frequencies were completely reflected from them, as if they were lined with material designed to reflect radiation. Other frequencies penetrated inside but did not return. It seemed that something inside was absorbing them, perhaps even interpreting. Suddenly, the idea of a structure resembling a city ceased to be science fiction. She was becoming an engineering fact, because the only reason for creating temperature-regulated cavities with a signal-blocking network structure inside a moving object is if these cavities have a specific purpose. And if this purpose is survival, then we may be dealing not with a stone, but with a vessel. To fully understand the anomaly of the three-eyed atlas structure, researchers began comparing it with the nearest human-made analogs: underground cities, nuclear shelters, and spacecraft. What they discovered was alarming. The internal structure not only resembled human designs, but its proportions reflected some of the most effective designs ever created for long-term human survival. Some cameras had a hexagonal shape used in aerospace engineering to maximize space and strength. Others followed the Fibonacci sequence, a ratio found in nature, as well as in highly efficient architectural designs. A physicist from the European Space Agency suggested that the inner design of a three-eyed atlas might represent a form of ecological compartmentalization, implying that the structure is intended to protect life or equipment from the extreme conditions of deep space. What if this is not the remnants of civilization, but a rescue capsule, a fragment of something much larger, perhaps a station, a ship, or even a colony sent into space not for exploration, but for salvation. And what does it mean that we intercepted it now, in our time, in our corner of space? Is it a coincidence? On a fixed trajectory? Or did it discover us long before we noticed it? Because if the three-eyed atlas is meant to transport something or someone through the stars, its arrival is not just an event. It's a message. For several weeks, agencies have debated how to name the structure within the three-eyed atlas. Some claim it is unnatural architecture, while others refer to it as a thermal anomaly with geometric resonance. But no one wants to publicly say, at least for now, what this could actually be. Evidence of extraterrestrial engineering. This term still evokes denial in mainstream circles. But with every hour, more data comes in, and each new scan confirms the same idea. This object is not entirely random. Its features have been placed, aligned, and adjusted, and whether it is active or in a dormant state, it does not merely pass through our system, it reveals itself. And while the three eyes of the Atlas continue their quiet movement, governments strive to set observation priorities. Military satellites have turned their gaze upon it. Communication systems are being recalibrated. Something has changed in the tone behind closed doors. This is a change that occurs when the unthinkable becomes undeniable. Because if what we see represents a structure, a machine resembling a city, frozen in time, then it is no longer just a scientific discovery. It is an event of civilizational scale. As images from the network began circulating among international observatories, a curious pattern emerged, not from the object itself, but from the people observing it. Some of the most renowned astrophysicists categorically refused to comment. Others made vague, euphemistic statements, calling the structure unexpected, unprecedented, or, worse, statistically unlikely. Behind these carefully chosen words lay fear, not of the object itself, but of what its acknowledgement would mean. To acknowledge that we have just captured an image of architecture resembling a city inside an interstellar object would mean shattering centuries of scientific consensus. This would mean that life with intelligence, architecture, and technology existed not only beyond Earth, but once was mobile, perhaps exploratory, perhaps desperate. And this life could leave behind a relic intended for survival after the death of its creators. Instead of confronting this grand reality, the scientific world wavered. And in this wavering, the truth slipped further into the shadows. Not everyone chose silence. In an event that shook the global astronomical community, a coalition of American and European defense satellites recalibrated their lenses on the three eyes of Atlas. These were not standard telescopes. These were thermal imaging systems, radio frequency tracking, deep space interference monitoring, typically used for spy satellites or missile defense. Why direct such sensitive equipment at a comet? The answer may lie in what they saw, and we did not. Rumors began to leak from within these agencies that the object not only has a structure, it slowly spins in an unnatural pattern, some of its thermal zones flickering at fixed intervals, while gravitational disturbances indicate a redistribution of mass within its core, as if mechanisms are being recalibrated deep inside. And the most ominous leak of all? A weak rhythmic pulse, not radio frequency or thermal, but gravitational, as if something inside uses gravity for communication. Suddenly, the military no longer monitored the stone. They were watching the device. At a closed round table with astrophysicists and artificial intelligence experts, Webb's data was uploaded into a high-precision spatial interpreter, an AI model designed to reconstruct three-dimensional structures based on multispectral scans. The results were shocking. The model created not just a plan, but a complete architectural map, including several levels, transport corridors, heat exchange systems, energy nodes, and even something that could be called storage rooms or isolation spaces. Artificial intelligence, lacking preconceived notions, simply followed the data. As a result, a chilling image emerged of a self-sufficient biosphere, a vessel designed to transport either organic life or hyper-extended systems across unimaginable distances. And then, a turn. A scientist, analyzing the curvature and orientation of the corridors, noticed that such a design is unsuitable for human physiology. The turns are too sharp. The vertical space is too narrow. What moves within this place does not resemble us. And perhaps it does not move at all. With the receipt of this information, a deep debate began in high scientific and military circles. Is the three-eyed Atlas a graveyard? An abandoned ship lost in time? Or is it a message deliberately sent by intelligent life? Some believe that its accuracy indicates intent, as no natural object behaves this way, and no dead apparatus emits controlled thermal pulses or aligned gravitational echoes. However, if this is indeed a message, it raises a terrifying hypothesis. The builders wanted to be found, or, worse yet, they anticipated that someone would find it, and they left something inside. But others warn, pointing out the possibility that we are not deciphering the signal, but rather triggering it. What, by scanning, exploring, and even observing it at such depth, we can activate systems that should remain dormant, as if we have entered a sealed tomb meant for closure. And while the Webb Telescope continues its observations, the question that now torments every agency, every laboratory, and every whispered conversation behind closed doors is no longer what it is. The question is, what will happen when it awakens? With the arrival of new data, astrophysicists begin to ask a question that was once considered absurd. Who built this? Not what, but who. The structure inside the 3IA Atlas contradicts natural processes, but not reason. Every corner, every chamber, every thermal vent hints at intent, and it's not just about survival, but long-term planning. This was not a desperate escape pod or a crude ark cast into space by a dying race. No, it looks precise, calculated, modular, and potentially replicable. The possibility that this object is part of a network, even a fleet, began to spread among a small group of SETI researchers. Because if this structure is one of many, then we have found not just a relic. We stumbled upon infrastructure, galactic infrastructure. The ruins of a civilization advanced enough to scatter artifacts across star systems, or worse, a probe sent ahead for scanning, observation, and reporting, raising a terrifying question. To whom exactly? Behind the scenes, the world's most powerful nations are not standing idly by. Leaks from space agencies, embassies, and even private contractors reveal that world leaders have been informed, prompting a quiet, yet massive mobilization. The United States reportedly redirected 3 orbital platforms for round-the-clock surveillance of an object called iAtlas 3. China has deployed a tracking system for deep space objects using artificial intelligence, typically intended for operations against satellites. The European Space Agency has suspended all data publications related to the object, refusing even to release raw public journals. Why such secrecy? For the first time in history, governments are confronted with the possible existence of a non-human megastructure passing through our solar system, and they do not know what to tell the public. The fear is not only that this may be true. The fear lies in what will happen when people believe in this, when the idea of intelligent life becomes indisputable, when belief systems, political hierarchies, and scientific models must confront something older, greater, and technologically superior. Against a backdrop of scientific chaos and political maneuvering, something unexpected occurred. Ancient civilizations began to be re-evaluated through the lens of 3I Atlas. Historians and anthropologists started to uncover sinister similarities between the geometric arrangement within the object and long-lost mythologies. Some Native American star maps depict round cities in the sky. Ancient Sumerian texts mention celestial chariots with central halls surrounded by 6 arches, resembling 3-dimensional models of iAtlas. Even Egyptologists noticed that the thermal nodes inside the object correspond to the same golden ratio used in the construction of the pyramids. Is this a coincidence? Could ancient civilizations have encountered such objects, recorded or remembered in our distant past? And if so, is the iAtlas the first contact or a return visit? The final act of revelation did not come through speculation. It came through movement. The ultra-sensitive instruments of the James Webb Telescope, calibrated to detect tiny movements, recorded subtle but undeniable changes within the structure. One of the internal chambers, previously static, shifted by 0.2 degrees. In cosmic terms, this is negligible. But in mechanical terms, it means the door opens or the mechanism unlocks. The shift occurred during a solar flare that unleashed electromagnetic radiation on 3I Atlas. Could this ancient structure be reactive to solar radiation? Perhaps it is designed to awaken only near a star. One scientist compared it to a hibernation protocol, where the object remains dormant until it receives energy from a viable star system. This viable system is ours. With this tiny movement, the 3I Atlas proved that they are not just fossils in flight, they react. They may be at rest, but they are not dead. When NASA, ESA, and even the private sector began coordinating observations of 3I Atlas, a long-forgotten document resurfaced. The Declaration of Principles of the United Nations regarding actions after the discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence was originally drafted several decades ago, when the search for extraterrestrial intelligence was just beginning. This document outlines response protocols in case of undeniable evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth. But there is one problem. The object known as the 3I Tellus does not send a signal. It does not transmit messages or greet. However, the discovery of artificial internal geometry, thermoregulation, and now mechanical movement compels the scientific community to rethink what can be considered communication. A moving door, an impulse, a shape with a specific meaning. If we take these phenomena as manifestations of intent, then according to the protocol we are now in contact, not in dialogue, but in observation. This means that every subsequent action, every probe, every signal, every attempt at deep scanning can be interpreted as a response. In such an ancient dialogue, we have no idea who might be listening to us. Some researchers, frustrated by the limitations of physical observations, turn to more radical ideas. They suggest that 3 Atlas may not contain biological life or even machines in the usual sense, but rather represent a non-localized intelligence. This is a form of consciousness that is not stored in the tissues of the brain or wires, but encoded in gravitational patterns, quantum states, or even in the geometry of space itself. Can this object be alive, but not in a biological sense, rather in a computational or dimensional sense? Can it be a thinking entity disguised as an object? One physicist described it as a passive algorithm woven into the shell of a comet, a cosmic sleeper that does not wait to speak, but waits to be deciphered. If this is true, perhaps we have just connected our best telescope to an alien intelligence, unaware of which part we are touching. The return to the path of 3 Atlas led to a frightening realization. Its trajectory is not entirely random. Although it enters the solar system at an angle that does not align with gravitational capture, its curved trajectory after entry is alarmingly close to several key orbital zones, first passing near Jupiter, then close to Mars, and finally near Earth's orbit before continuing on its path. It seems that the object is exploring planetary signatures, like a drone scanning biosignals. One hypothesis gaining popularity is that this is not just a visitor, but a probe designed to search for Earth-like planets and transmit this data upon finding them. The question is whether the transmission mechanism worked when the Webb telescope scanned it. Or did the 3 Atlas send their message long before we noticed it? If so, where and to whom was it sent? And here is the most troubling theory of all, a twist in the narrative we told ourselves. What if the 3 Atlas was not a random object intercepted by our telescope, but a probe designed to detect developing civilizations at the moment they reach a certain level of observational capability? In other words, he discovered us at the moment we discovered him. The powerful gaze of the James Webb Telescope could have played the role of a trigger, a kind of cosmic handshake. The telescope became a mirror, and the object responded to us with its blinking. Some now fear that the 3I Atlas were not originally intended for communication, but only for recording, judging, signaling whether the planet's inhabitants have become noticeable, active, or potentially dangerous. It is not a weapon, for now, but a witness, a harbinger. And if he confirmed our existence, the next may be completely beyond our control. Here we are, in a moment of human history that may one day be remembered as the instant when everything changed. Not with landings, data transmissions, or the roar of spacecraft, but with a silent city structure frozen within stone, drifting among the stars. We did not find ruins on Mars. We did not hear voices from Alpha Centauri. We simply looked deeper than ever before, and the universe answered us, because the 3I Atlas are not just a stone, not just a guest, not just an object passing by. This is a construction, a relic, a vessel, a signal, a structure that challenges our scientific arrogance and tears apart the veil of cosmic isolation that we have wrapped ourselves in for centuries. And perhaps it was not by chance. Perhaps the 3I Atlas did not just drift here by accident. Perhaps it was placed, released, or activated at the moment we became capable of seeing it, not to connect with us, not to destroy us, but to observe us, because perhaps we were never alone. Perhaps we were never unknown. Perhaps we have always been part of a larger story, unfolding in the cold, ancient silence between the stars. And if this is true, then the question is not, what is Iatlas? The real question is what will happen now that he knows we are watching.